Our friends at FanDuel have lost their minds. They are way underestimating the TCU Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. I'm going to talk a lot about FanDuel and how they're crazy with where they set the win total over-under for TCU football. We're also going to get into TCU women's basketball is your Big 12 champions for the regular season. Mark Campbell, in his second year, goes on the road to Waco in the season finale and beats Baylor in a winner-take-all league championship game. Frogs get it done. Baseball drops 2 out of 3 to Southern Miss. Some concerning signs there, but we start today. FanDuel has released their over-unders for win totals for the Big 12. Now, this is subject to change over the next few months, but right now, TCU football is at 6.5 wins, over-under 6.5 wins. So first of all, give me your thoughts here in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet at me as Simcox Steven. But let me make it clear right now. This is a disrespectful over-under. Last season, the over-under was 7.5. And I said, listen, TCU's going to win more than 7.5 games. The year before, it was 7.5. I made a lot of noise about how they were going to win more than 7.5 games last year. Oops. I was wrong. But to me, this says one thing. The betting market is basically saying this is the same football team as last year with a tougher schedule. Because the arrow is pointing up for TCU at the moment. They close the season strong. They've got a returning quarterback who put up insane numbers last year. A defense that will be in year 2 of its scheme under Andy Avalos. That is going to have an experienced pass rush, an experienced secondary. An offensive line that's been retooled. Losing a lot of the skill positions, specifically wide receiver, but they've gone after that aggressively in the transfer portal. Let's go game by game. North Carolina on the road to start the season. Miss me with the, well, look what happened the last time TCU played a famous coach making his debut in college football. That was a totally unique circumstance. Bill Belichick, do I have reservations and concerns about the fact that he's going to have months to prepare for this TCU team? Yes, I do. Do I feel like he'll have a good game plan for the TCU offense specifically? Yes, I do. But it's not always the X's and the O's. In a lot of cases, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. And this North Carolina team is essentially the same team that had a very disappointing year last season. I don't think they've made the personnel changes necessary to beat TCU even at home. That's a win. Follow that up with your FCS game against Abilene Christian. You're 2-0 versus SMU at home. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, SMU is getting better. I think TCU should honestly reconsider the way they've approached this rivalry given SMU's improvements. They're coming off a playoff appearance. But I think at home, if this team is who I think they are, they will win that game. They will finish non-conference play 3-0. We are already essentially halfway to 7 wins. At Arizona State, again, going to be tough. Sam Leavitt, really good quarterback. I think Kenny Dillingham's a great coach. Cam Scadaboo's not walking through that door. We can call it a coin flip for now. But even if they drop that game, for argument's sake, let's say they do. 3-1. I think they take care of business against Colorado at home. I understand what happened last time that Deion Sanders came to town. I get it. He does not have Shadur Sanders. He does not have Travis Hunter. I am significantly less scared of the Colorado Buffaloes without 2 of the best players in college football. Arguably the best and one of the best QBs in college football. On the road, that's an L for the Buffs. TCU takes care of business. That's 4 wins. At Kansas State, I mean, really the same story as TCU. A lot of changes. Going to Manhattan, get a victory, that's 5 wins. Take care of business against Baylor at home, that's 6 wins. On the road in Morgantown, difficult place to play. TCU hasn't had success there. Rich Rodriguez, a lot of excitement around that program. But again, another first-year head coach. Another team with a lot of turnover. That's 7 wins. Iowa State at home. Even if you drop that, you've already hit your total. At Houston and versus Cincinnati, those better be victories. Now you're sitting at 9. Listen, the schedule's tough. There's no way around it. It's a tough schedule. You got to go to Provo. Not going to be fun. In Morgantown, not going to be fun. In Manhattan, in Tempe. These are all tough road trips. But TCU has been building towards this for a few seasons now. This year specifically. They rolled the dice with Chandler Morris. It did not work. They blew the thing up. They brought in Josh Hoover. They've surrounded him with good players. Let's just cut to the chase. If TCU ends up under 6.5 wins, 6 wins or left, 6 wins or less, excuse me, then Mike Buddy has a really difficult choice to make, and I think he would part ways with this coaching staff. That's not me being hyperbolic. I just think it's the truth. Barring like some unforeseen injury that creates the context to make it make sense, that's where we would be at. That's what we'd be talking about. So they better hit the over. Because honestly, like, this is the year. This is the year they've been building towards for a Big 12 championship. And yeah, they're going to have to improve some things. They need to run the ball more effectively. They have to. Offensive line-wise, they need more consistency. Defense has to be better, especially up the middle. You cannot let teams just run the ball at will against you. And honestly, one of the big differences last year, when they played good teams, think about it. SMU. What did they do? Did Kevin Jennings have some good moments throwing the ball? Sure. But what did they do when it got down to it? They ran the ball at TCU all game long. Frogs had no answer. Houston ran the ball. Baylor. Sawyer Robertson had a nice game, but it was Bryson Washington just having his way with the TCU defense, toting the rock, running the football. Hakeem Ajibalaiba was out that game. Marcus Deal was out that game. They were thin at defensive tackle. I understand why. I'm just telling you, their inability to run the ball and to stop the run was the difference last season. UCF couldn't slow down that run game. RJ Harvey just had himself a second half. And then off of that, Kobe Hudson torched JT Broughton in one-on-one situations. But it was set up by the fact that KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey were doing what they wanted on the ground. That was the story of the season. On the other side of the ball in the UCF game, couldn't run the ball effectively. Could not milk the clock. Couldn't string together a few first downs to play keep away and win that ball game. Against Baylor, just not efficient enough on offense. Some really good drives, some really great things. Had a 4th and 2 around midfield in the second half of that game. And Sonny Dykes had no confidence that his team could pick up the first down. You know why he had no confidence his team could pick up the first down? Because he didn't think they could run the ball. And he was right. So those things have to get better. But they brought in Randy Clements to work with the offensive line. They've got Cade Bennett coming back from injury. They have a QB who is entering basically year 3 as a starter. This is a disrespectful over-under win total. They're going to win more than 6.5 games. They're going to win 7+ ball games. If they don't, this is going to be a very sad podcast next year. And hey, I'm here till the wheels fall off, so I'll be doing it each and every week. I'm just telling you, they're going to hit the over here. And I've said it the last few off seasons. I've been right once, I've been wrong once. Last year it was a little sketchy at times, but they ended up getting the job done. This is different. It is kind of concerning to me, though, because I think it speaks to the fact that the Big 12, I don't think the betting markets know how to evaluate Big 12 football. And I don't necessarily blame them, because look at the teams that played for a Big 12 title last year. I mean, Iowa State was sort of in the mix. Arizona State was picked to finish last. BYU was off the radar. BYU didn't play for a conference title game, but I feel like you guys understand what I mean. They were right there in the mix, correct? It was a bunch of teams that we didn't expect. But to me, this says they're evaluating TCU and they're saying, oh, yeah, that's the same football team. It's just a tougher schedule. It's not. It is a tougher schedule, but it's not the same football team. And it better not be, for Sonny Dykes' sake. When we come back, TCU women's basketball wins a league title. We'll celebrate next here on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. Okay, I've beaten up our friends at FanDuel for a while here, but I do need to talk about them. FanDuel.com. It's all in good fun. This is great. This is what we love. This is what makes the show happen. We're here to embrace debate. When the game tips off, NBA action, you can make live bets on NBA games. You can also bet on these over-unders like I talked about. Hammer that over, 6.5 TCU. 6.5 wins for the year. You can also place live bets on NFL games. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. TCU women's basketball is your Big 12 champions. Congrats to Mark Campbell and his squad. First conference title since 2005. First Big 12 title in the program's history. They take down Baylor. This was a winner. This was a league championship game. Winner take all. Last game of the Big 12 schedule, 5:30 on a Sunday night. This was it. This was what was going to decide a title. And it's really wild to think about how impressive this victory was. Now, based on the final score, 51-48, you might think, man, this was an ugly ball game. I'll tell you what, it was. It was for two teams that can really score the basketball. This game was ugly. The defenses were getting after it. They were forcing turnovers. This was one of the more physical basketball games I have ever seen. And that might sound like a wild take, but I feel like people that watched it will understand what I mean. If you went in the lane trying to get an easy whistle, it wasn't happening tonight. There were multiple possessions on both ends of the floor where somebody took massive contact, got hacked, and there was no whistle. In the first half, Haley Van Lith literally got hit by like 3 different players and sort of just threw the ball up in desperation, saying to herself, surely I'll get a call here. No call. And I think, in typical kind of road basketball fashion, the whistles didn't break TCU's way for the most part. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain about it. They found a way to win. And that's just part of playing on the road, to be real about it, to be honest. But they win a slugfest 51-48. And Baylor had won 9 in a row coming into this ball game. There was a great atmosphere there at Foster Pavilion. A really good TCU showing in Waco tonight. But a lot of Baylor fans there, obviously. A bunch of students there. They understood what was going on. It was a chance to win a Big 12 title. So to go on the road, and this is an experienced team. Like, don't get me wrong. Haley Van Lith's been in big games. Sedona Prince has been in big games back at during her time at Oregon. Madison Connor's been playing college basketball forever. Taylor Bigby played in some big games for USC last year. But they haven't really played in a game of this magnitude together. Campbell said after the game, they weren't ready for the moment when they went to Manhattan to play Kansas State, but they were ready tonight. And they did it defensively. I mean, this is one of those games. Who cares how you win? Just find a way to survive. But for a team that their identity is spread the floor, let their guards go to work in the pick and roll, shoot a ton of threes, make those threes. They had a rough shooting night. They shot 35% from the floor, 35% from three, 7 of 20, and they needed every shot they could get. And early in that game, it was immediately clear what Baylor was going to do. They were going to hound the TCU guards and trap them off the pick and roll, pressure them basically full court, try to force turnovers, try to make Haley Van Lith uncomfortable. And they did in the first half. I mean, Haley's final line, she was 5 of 13 from the field. She ended up with 14 points. Now, she had some big buckets, had a big crossover jumper right before halftime, got to the line a few times in the second half in critical situations. But overall, it was a tough night for her. But she got some buckets when she had to. Madison Connor in the first half looked as uncomfortable as you could. I mean, some bad misses, like airballing a few threes. But in the second half of that ball game, she had a big three in transition. She had a huge three coming down the floor late in that ball game, I think, to give them a 9-point lead. But early in the game, it was Sedona Prince from the mid-range that made the difference. Like, she was just getting the ball at the free throw line. They were sagging off of her. They didn't want her to get easy buckets down low. And so she was just pulling jumpers, and she was knocking them down. She ended up with 16 points, 19 boards, 2 blocks. She had a great ball game. But I think the thing that impressed me the most, the defense was so good all night. They were so connected. And I guess I wasn't shocked, but Donovan Hunter had 3 fouls in the first half. Donovan Hunter is TCU's best perimeter defender. She also initiates the offense. She is their point guard. She had 3 fouls in the first half, and it was interesting to me. Mark Campbell put her back on the floor. Like, there were a few possessions where he took her off the floor, and then she put her back on the court. And I think it just spoke to the fact that her defense is a huge difference maker, but also they needed her to initiate the offense because she's the best ball handler on the team. And the pressure didn't bother her as much as it bothered some of the other guards. But the defense all night long was relentless. Baylor had a horrible shooting night, and I'm sure they're kicking themselves for their performance. 27% from the field. TCU held them to 18 for 65, 2 of 12 from 3. And it got squirrely late, like it has for this team in a lot of different instances. Had a 5-second violation, which was rough. Couldn't inbounds the ball, had a couple turnovers, but when they had to get stops, they got stops. And they knocked down just enough free throws to survive and win the ball game. Just an impressive effort. And we've talked about it this year. You know, they mentioned it on the broadcast. This team was holding open tryouts last season. Their season almost just came to a screeching halt because they didn't have enough players available. And they finally got healthy, and they made a little bit of noise in the Big 12 tournament, but nothing crazy. And then this offseason, Mark Campbell just said, you know what? I'm going to go get some players. He somehow convinced Haley Van Lith, who was coming off a rough year at LSU, but was still a huge commodity in the sport, to come to TCU and play. He got some key players like Taylor Bigby. Daisha Merrill tonight, 0 points. She's not going to be like the top story, but she had to come in because Sonny Prince got elbowed in the stomach late in the first half, and she had to play 4 or 5 minutes against Vaughn Lay, Baylor's really good post player, and she played good basketball. Like, great defense. Made it tough on Vaughn Lay. She was a difference maker. So just big time moments from players where it's like you need help from your bench, you got it. You had to survive a night where you couldn't shoot the ball very well, you did that. Madison Connor can't throw it in the ocean, and then in the second half, in the fourth quarter, she hits 2 big threes. Agnes Imanapu had a rough shooting night. She hits a big 3 in the fourth. Taylor Bigby hits a big 3 in the fourth. kind of off balance, running off a screen. I mean, when they had to have some big shots, they got them. Super happy for them and just impressed with their effort. A big time victory for Mark Campbell and company. When we come back, we'll talk about TCU men's basketball getting a victory against UCF and a rough series for baseball. All that coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Are you tired of sitting on the sidelines and wondering and hoping that TCU has adequate NIL? Why not download the Roy app today? Roy allows you to donate directly to TCU athletes. You get to choose a player you want to support. You get to decide how much you want to contribute and get exclusive content from the athletes straight to you. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of TCU. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing TCU athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Get in on it today by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite TCU athletes. Jump off the sidelines and into the NIL game. Do it today. TCU men's basketball stopped their 2-game losing streak with a victory over UCF, 89-78. They are now 9-9 in conference play with a home game against Baylor on Tuesday and then closing out the regular season on the road against Colorado this next weekend. Vashawn Allett was leading scorer with 17 points. He had a good night. David Punch and Micah Robinson looked good. The freshmen making an impact as well. Noah Reynolds continuing to struggle shooting the basketball. They scored 49 points in the first half. I was impressed with their energy coming off a rough couple of games. I don't really know what the tournament looks like for this team. I think if they can win their last 2 and win a couple of games in the Big 12 tournament, they have a case. But I'm still skeptical, given all the bid stealers we're going to see here in the next couple of weeks, that TCU is going to be a factor when we talk about the postseason. Even though it is funny that, I mean, we'll see what happens against BU. Baylor is also kind of struggling. They picked up a win over Oklahoma State on Saturday, but Scott Drew's team limping to the finish as well. If they can finish 11-9, it would be Jamie's first plus 500 season in Big 12 play, and they might end up coming up short and not making the tournament. But we'll see. Win out. Hopefully win a few games in the Big 12 tournament and see where you're at. But nice to bounce back and get a victory after a rough couple of games, especially shooting the basketball. TCU baseball will more than likely fall the top 25 after dropping 2 out of 3 at home against Southern Miss. Came back and won on Friday 5-2, lost 5-3 on Saturday, lost 11-3 today. It's very early. You got a lot of young players, all the caveats. I'll say this, the things that are concerning me right now, this offense is rough. Anthony Silva hit a home run on Friday, had a couple singles over the weekend. Looks like he's maybe figuring out a little bit. But, you know, Isaac Cadena hits the ball hard. My issue is this is not a team right now that is hitting the ball hard just right at people. They are not barreling the ball up well. There were a lot of lazy flyouts this weekend, a lot of weak ground balls to third, to short. They do not look like a team that can barrel it up and drive it out of the ballpark. And Trevor Baumler, I get it, young guy. He fought through some innings today. But the problem is, if you can't score, it's totally normal and reasonable to have some question marks with your third starter, especially if he's a young guy. But if you can't score runs, then you don't have much margin for error. And if you're not going to be a team that can drive the ball out of the ballpark, then you have to manufacture runs. They got picked off twice today. Got caught stealing going to second once today. They get thrown out on the base pass so often. And this has been a recurring problem. I get it. Bill Mosiello wants to be aggressive, but if you're not going to hit the ball at the ballpark, you have to play small ball and capitalize when you can. They're not doing that right now. Cademan Parker and Braden Sloan are a really good 1-2 punch on Friday nights. Once you get past that, it's an adventure. Tommy Laporte didn't have his best stuff on Saturday, but he hung around. You know, they made it a game. It was 5-1 going into the ninth. They scratched across a few runs. Had a chance with Franco with the bases loaded to possibly break that thing open, but they couldn't do it. So 2 weekend series in a row. Now, last weekend was a tournament essentially. But again, you drop 2 out of 3. It's early, but not a lot of positivity right now and a lot to figure out for TCU baseball. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's Locked on Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.